Welcome to Papa's Workshop. This is a prototype of a planter that I wanted to make that's dual purpose. It will be able to support the 5-gallon bucket, and it will also support the crates. And that's something I have never seen anywhere on any of the planters. To be able to change it, all I have to do is change out a couple of slats, drop them down to the next level, and be able to drop the 5-gallon bucket in, and it's perfect. Now, making this was very simple and easy to be able to do, and again, it's not perfect, but this is a prototype and a proof of concept. Now that I know the sizes, I can go ahead and build some out of the cedar and put stainless steel screws in it instead of just these little nails, and be able to have a very nice planter that will last a long time. Several years ago, I planted a lot of strawberries in the crates, and it worked out fantastic. But I never liked the look of the crates. Well, now I have a way to be able to make a very pretty planter that anybody would love to be able to have in their yard. Now, I'm thrilled to be doing the gardening again, and the plants are just going crazy. I have tons of the bell peppers all over the different plants that I have. The strawberries are just going crazy, and yes, I am trying to double and triple the number of the strawberries that I have, and this is one of the runners here I'm getting ready to plant. But you'll notice everything that I have is either in the pots such as this or in the 5-gallon buckets. Oh, and by the way, I do have tons of strawberries that we've been eating on all season long, and they are just gorgeous. A quick tour around the garden, and you can see that virtually everything that I have is planted in the 5-gallon buckets. Well, this is great for the garden area, but it really isn't okay if you want to be able to decorate the yard, or if you want to be able to put some, let's say, in the front of the house. Having the 5-gallon buckets out there is just not good. For this project, I'm using 4 of the pressure-treated thin slats. And one of the things that I've noticed right up front is these are not 6 inches wide. If you look at cedar, they're typically 6 inches wide. Unfortunately, these are about 5 3/8 of an inch. And that makes a big difference. So my measurements will have to be adjusted. But I'm starting out, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this down 2 strips that are 2 inches wide. Actually 1 7/8 inches. I made it just a little bit smaller because that leftover last piece is going to be for the other portion of my vertical uprights. Now, these stiles are actually 2 inches wide, or I should say exactly 1 7/8 inches wide, and I'm going to make them 17 inches long. Now, if you have staples in the bottom, please remove it before you run this through the saw, because that will either damage the saw blade or it's going to mess up your measurement if that staple hits your stop block. But once I had that taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 pieces that are the 1 7/8 inches by the 17 inches. And then that little small piece that was left over off of the thin slat was about 1 3/8 inches wide. And that is going to be, again, 17 inches tall. So these 2 pieces will be joined together to form the corner of the box. One of them will be the 1 3/8 inches, and the other one, of course, will be the 1 7/8 inches. And that will create a nice look and appearance. So in addition to the appearance of the planter, it also serves a dual purpose on creating the legs that you need to be able to support the planter. You want it just a little bit off the ground so that when the water drips through, it has some place to go. To assemble this project, I am going to be using the waterproof Titebond 3, the ultimate waterproof glue. Now, I think this is important even for the prototype, because even though I'm really not going to do anything decorative with this, and I am going to use it outside for as long as it will hold up with those little bitty small nails in it. So the glue will help make it last just a little bit longer. So as far as these sides, this is the 1 7/8 inches on one piece, and the other piece is my 1 3/8 inches. And I'm just going to go ahead with the glue on it, tack this into position so that it'll dry. Normally, if I were going to make this type of a style, it would be 2 inches by 2 inches. And because I'm putting it on top of each other, one of them, of course, would be the 2-inch wide, and on the other side would be 1.5 inches, considering that the slat is a 1/2 inch thick. But I'm trying to save and don't want to use the excess wood, and I don't want to have a lot of scraps left over. So that's the reason it went to the 1 7/8 by the 1 3/8. And that still will give me overall the same appearance. To verify that, I went ahead and measured this, and sure enough, yes, it is the same measurement. So that's right at the 1 7/8 by the 1 7/8 as far as the finished look. Now please keep in mind too, this is very rough. I did not sand it or do anything special with this. Again, the whole purpose of this is to be able to have a proof of concept and to ensure that all my measurements are going to work. Other than that, it's not a pretty planter, but it's certainly going to be an effective one. And if this is successful, and I believe it will be, I can hardly wait to be able to grab some cedar fence slats and make some really nice ones that I can put out in front of the house with some flowers and some potted plants. Now the crate that I have is actually 13 inches by 13 inches. In order to be able to have just a little bit of wiggle room, I'm going to make this planter 13 1/4 by 13 1/4. So the first slat that I'm going to be cutting is just that. It's going to be 13 1/4 inches by the 13 1/4, and I'm going to need 3 of them. 2 of them will be full size, and then 1 will have to be cut down smaller. And that smaller one I'm going to put in the middle between the 2 full-size slats, just to make it a little bit more of a balanced look. Now if you're following along so that you want to make your own, that's 3 slats for each side. So you'll need 2 sides that are the 13 1/4 with 3 each. And then on the other 2 slides, you're going to need to have this at 14 1/2 because this wood is a 1/2 inch thick, and you're going to need to be able to add that extra inch to be able to accommodate it to make sure that the overall dimension of the opening is 13 1/4 by the 13 1/4. Now I have some spacer blocks in there so it keeps my spacing perfect, and I can go ahead and ensure that this is all square, and I do that by checking the measurement diagonally, and it turned out just perfect. I had to make just a slight adjustment, but not a big deal. With the glue in place, and all it was ready is just staple this in place. Now keep in mind, don't forget, if I was making the real ones out of the cedar, I would maybe tack it with some nails, but I would come back with some stainless steel screws so that this would last a long time. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the spacer blocks, and I want to make one more identical to this. And to be able to assemble it, I always test fit everything first. But I'm going to go ahead and drop the spacer block in, make sure that it lines up the way that I want it, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add the glue and tack it in with the nails. Now keep in mind, the glue is what's really holding this planter together. The nails really don't do much at all. And that's why I said once I build the cedar, I'm going to be using the stainless steel screws and the glue to be able to hold it together. So I'm sure I'm going to get tons of comments, and that's okay, but I wanted to clarify and make sure that you understand exactly what I'm doing with this project. Now you can see I have the 2 full-size slats in position, and that smaller one goes right into the middle. And that ended up being roughly about 4 1/2 inches wide. And one last check to make sure that it's square, and I'll nail the last piece in, and these 2 sides will be finished. Next I'm going to go ahead and add some little scrap wood down at the bottom to hold those 2 slats to support the bucket or the strawberry crate. And I'm just going to again put the glue on and nail them in place. Now this is not the ideal way to do it, and this is why I do prototypes, because I'm really going to have to add that extra amount of distance that I told you to these uprights to be able to have the bucket fit correctly. I gave you the correct measurements when we were cutting at the miter saw. Now it's time to go ahead and finish the assembly, and this part's real easy. I just need to add the glue down into the slot that I created, And I'm going to put some additional glue on the other side, and literally it's just a matter of putting these slats directly into that slot. The slot itself will hold it in place until I put some nails in there. And once I have all 6 of these slats into vertical position, I'll just take the other side, put it on top with the glue, and nail it in. Now, just as a reminder, the slats on this part is 14.5 inches because they fit down into that slot. And that would be necessary because, again, this wood's a 1/2 inch thick. So these are the 14.5 inches. The other ones were the 13.5. So keep that in mind. So I've got these 3 in place. I'm going to go ahead and put the other 3 in place, and then I'll just go ahead and drop the other side on. Now to put the trim piece on the top, and again I'm using the glue and those little nails. Now these, because the opening of the box is 13.25 inches by the 13.25, these trim pieces also were cut at the same measurement, and of course cut at the 45-degree angle. So once in place, I just go ahead with the glue and then tack them in place with the nails. Now, because I did take the time to make sure that this box was perfectly square and to make sure that the inside dimension was correct, it makes putting these trim pieces on extremely easy because they fit perfectly and they do form a perfect 45-degree angle. Anything that was off on the assembly and my cutting earlier in this project would make this portion an absolute nightmare. But as you can see, it's going together very nicely. The miter joints are absolutely perfect, and this little planter box is beginning to take shape. Well, there we have the actual planter is completed. The only thing I need to do now is take some scrap wood left over from my slats and just go ahead and cut the 2 slats that'll drop into the bottom to be able to support the bucket. Now, just to make a quick test with my 2 slats dropping right in there, I'm going to grab the strawberry crate. We'll put that in first, and that is perfect. It's just below the surface of the top trim piece, and that's what I wanted. Now, just by moving those 2 slats down to the lower level, and that only takes a second to do, then I'll be able to put the 5-gallon bucket in and should have the similar results. So let's take a look and see. And there we go. That's absolutely perfect. So the proof of concept is a success. Now there's a lot of things that I can do to this. I can add some additional trim pieces on the outside. Of course, I can sand it and finish it and make it really pretty. But that was not the goal of this particular project. Now what works really nice about this system is I have 2 sets of runners. One that's set for the height of the strawberry crate and one for the 5-gallon bucket. Then I have these 2 slats that literally just drop in position. Now at this point, I can drop in the strawberry crate and it gives me the perfect height. If I want to use the 5-gallon bucket, I drop that down into this point. Now I left the space on this runner so it's open, and it makes it where I can easily put those slats in position. And then at this point, the 5-gallon bucket just drops right down in where it needs to be. So this is a very, very simple, easy to do system that works absolutely fantastic. To change it, just slip it up, drop it in, and I'm ready for the strawberry crate. So either way, this is an ideal multi-purpose planter. I'm going to go ahead and leave this set up, put my strawberry crate in, and I think I'm going to go find some strawberries. I think it's time to plant. But if you look outside in the garden, I think this is a nice addition. I think I'm going to go ahead and fill up the crate with some dirt and plant some strawberries. In addition, when I'm going to make the cedar one, I think I'm going to go ahead and plant some flowers for the front yard. Well, I've got the strawberries planted and I think this looks great. I want to thank everybody for spending some time in the garden with me today, as well as the shop, building this prototype planter. I think this is going to get a lot of use, and I can hardly wait to be able to make the ones out of cedar. So again, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope that you think about making one or even more of these planters for your garden. Again, thank you very much for watching this video and supporting this channel. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next video that I do. So for now, bye-bye, and I'm going to get back in the garden and the shop.